The text came while I was folding laundry. 3 sentences that shattered 22 years of my life. I'm leaving you. I've already emptied our joint account. By the time you read this, I'll be in Miami with my 20-year-old babe. Good luck, haha. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking, my throat tight. Was this how a marriage ended? Not with tears, not with a fight, but with a smug little message written like a bad joke. My chest burned, but I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I simply typed back, "Good luck." Because Ethan thought he had blindsided me. He thought I was powerless. What he didn't know was that I had already made my move. And when he discovered it, it was far too late. The text came while I was folding laundry. A basket of clean clothes sat on the couch, sunlight spilling across the room, and for a moment life felt ordinary. Then my phone buzzed, and in an instant everything changed. 3 sentences. That's all it took to erase 22 years of marriage. I'm leaving you. I've already emptied our joint account. By the time you read this, I'll be in Miami with my 20-year-old babe. Good luck, haha. Froze. My eyes burned as I read the words again and again, hoping I had misread them. But no. Ethan, my husband, my partner, my so-called best friend, had chosen to end our life together through a smug, mocking text message. My hands trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. My breath caught in my chest, shallow and sharp. Was this it? Was this really how it ended? I thought of all the years I had given him. The nights I stayed up late balancing our bills while he chased business ideas that never worked. The vacations I canceled because he said we couldn't afford them. The promotions I turned down so I could be home, keeping the house steady while he built his dreams. And now, while I stood surrounded by laundry and silence, he was flying off to Miami with someone half his age, laughing at me from thousands of miles away. I wanted to scream, to smash the phone against the wall, to call him and demand an explanation. But I didn't. Instead, something inside me went eerily still. A strange, icy calm settled over me. I typed back 2 words. Good luck. And that was it. Because Ethan thought he had destroyed me. He thought that emptying our joint account meant I was powerless. He thought running to Miami with a 20-year-old would humiliate me, leave me crumbling, broken. But Ethan didn't know the truth. Because I had already made my move. The irony, my boring, predictable nature, the thing he always mocked, was exactly what saved me. See, I had seen the cracks long before that text. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the smell of cologne that wasn't mine. I wasn't stupid. I knew something was coming. And while he thought he was clever, I had been preparing in silence. Little by little, I had moved our savings into an account under my name only. Legally, carefully, every receipt filed, every transfer justified. I had copies of every tax return, every mortgage statement, every business contract Ethan had signed without reading. So when he typed, "I've already emptied our joint account," he thought it was a final blow. But the truth was, there wasn't much left in that account to take. I had already protected myself. And not just financially. Because Ethan wasn't only betraying me with a mistress. He was betraying me in ways he couldn't even imagine. And soon, when he realized what I knew, what I had already done, his smug little laugh would disappear. That day I didn't cry. I folded the rest of the laundry, placed the basket neatly in the hallway, and sat at the table with my cup of tea. My hands still shook, but my mind was sharp, focused, 'cause now the game had changed. Ethan thought he had won. But really, he had just triggered the beginning of his own downfall. And I was ready to watch it unfold. When people hear my story, they always focus on the text. They imagine the moment, the shock, the betrayal, the humiliation. But what most people don't realize is that the text wasn't the beginning of my heartbreak. It was the final nail. My marriage had been dying long before Ethan sent those words. I remember the early years when we were young and foolish, full of dreams. He wanted to start a business. I wanted stability. He called me cautious, boring. But I believed in him. I worked extra shifts at the hospital, sometimes 12, 14 hours straight, so he could take the risk. I paid the bills, balanced the books, cooked meals at midnight when he stumbled home exhausted or drunk. I told myself it was worth it. That once his business took off, we'd finally live the life he promised me. But the business never really took off. Not in the way he dreamed. There were always investors backing out, unexpected expenses. Next year will be better. And each time I held my tongue. Each time I picked up the slack. He told me once, "You're my rock, Arya. I couldn't do this without you." And I clung to those words. They were the only reward I got for all the sacrifices. But slowly, those words turned hollow. The more I gave, the less he noticed. He stopped saying thank you. He stopped seeing me at all. I was just there. Reliable. Predictable. And then came the lies. First they were small. He said he'd be home by 8 and showed up at midnight. He said he was meeting investors but left receipts from bars 2 towns over. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe we were just going through a rough patch. But my gut told me otherwise. One evening I was folding clothes when I noticed lipstick, bright red, on the collar of his white dress shirt. My chest went cold. I asked him about it, voice trembling. He laughed. Actually laughed. "Don't be paranoid, Arya. Maybe it rubbed off when I hugged a client's wife." I wanted to believe him, but the way he said it, so dismissive, so casual, felt like a slap. That night, I lay awake in bed while he snored beside me, staring at the ceiling, my heart splitting in two. I thought of our daughter, Emma, asleep in the next room. I thought of how she saw her father as a hero, and how I was supposed to protect that illusion. So I stayed silent. I stayed silent when he forgot anniversaries. Silent when he skipped Emma's school play because of a meeting. Silent when he blew money on things I couldn't trace. Because that's what I thought good wives did. They endured. But endurance turned me into a shadow of myself. The breaking point wasn't even the lipstick. It was Emma. She was 17 when she came home in tears because her father had promised to take her college visiting, but he never showed. She sat on the couch, clutching her acceptance letter, her voice shaking. "Does Dad even care?" she asked me. Had no answer. My throat locked, my chest aching. Because I couldn't lie to her anymore. I saw the truth in her eyes. She already knew. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the kitchen alone, staring at the glowing clock on the stove. And for the first time, I whispered the words I had been afraid to admit out loud. "He doesn't love us." My chest cracked open with grief. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed until the sun came up. But grief turned into something else. Resolve. Because as much as Ethan chipped away at me, I wasn't going to let him destroy Emma. I started making copies of everything. Bank statements, contracts, tax forms. I learned to look for patterns. Money moving from one account to another. Debts hidden behind business expenses. I didn't know exactly what I was building, but I knew I needed protection. Ethan mocked me when he noticed me filing paperwork. "You and your boring little folders," he sneered. "What would you even do without me?" I smiled thinly, biting my tongue. Because I already knew the answer. I could live without him. I just hadn't realized yet that one day I'd have to. So when that text finally came, when he said he was leaving for Miami with a 20-year-old and had emptied the account, I didn't collapse. Yes, my heart hurt. Yes, I wanted to scream. But underneath the heartbreak was steel. Because I had prepared for this moment. And Ethan didn't know it yet. But the game he thought he had won. It was already lost. After that text, most people expected me to collapse. My sister told me later she thought I'd come running to her in tears. My neighbors whispered that I'd probably sell the house and move in with family. But instead I got quiet. 'Cause I needed to know why. Why throw away 2 decades? Why humiliate me with a text instead of facing me like a man? Why empty our account when he had always bragged about how successful he was becoming? Those questions gnawed at me, keeping me awake long after Emma had gone to bed. So I started digging. I went through our home office, opening drawers Ethan thought I never touched. Bills, credit card statements, bank letters. I piled them high on the desk, sorting them like a puzzle. And what I found chilled me. Our joint account wasn't even the main one. Over the past 2 years, Ethan had opened at least 3 different accounts in his name only. One of them had transactions that made no sense. Large transfers in and out, as if money was being funneled somewhere. First I thought it was gambling. Or maybe business debt he was hiding. But then I noticed the withdrawals. They weren't random. They were tied to trips. Miami, Los Angeles, even Vegas. And then came the credit card charges. Jewelry stores, luxury hotels, designer boutiques. Not once, not twice, but dozens of times. And the kicker. All of these purchases lined up with weekends when he had told me he was meeting investors. My stomach twisted. I picked up one receipt in particular. A weekend stay at the Palms in Miami. Over $3,000 for 3 nights. My hands shook as I stared at the date. That same weekend, Ethan had told Emma he couldn't make her piano recital because of last-minute business. He had missed her big moment for this. For her. Vanessa. I didn't know her name at first. Not until I scrolled through the phone bill and saw one number repeated over and over. Late-night calls, hours long. When I searched the number online, my heart nearly stopped. It belonged to a woman named Vanessa Miller, 20 years old, cocktail waitress. And here's what cut deeper than the age difference, deeper than the betrayal. I knew her. She had been at our house once, introduced as the niece of one of Ethan's business partners. She had smiled politely, shaken my hand, and told Emma she had the sweetest laugh. I never thought twice about it. Now I realized, while I had been making her coffee in my kitchen, she had been sneaking into my husband's life. The more I dug, the worse it got. Ethan hadn't just fallen for a younger woman. He had been funding her entire lifestyle. Rent, vacations, shopping sprees. All paid for out of accounts he thought I'd never find. And then came the most dangerous discovery. Buried in the tax returns was a line that didn't belong. Money routed to a shell company. At first, I thought it was just another one of his failed business projects. But Claire, my lawyer friend, took one look at it and shook her head. This isn't just infidelity money, she told me. This looks like fraud. If he's shifting assets into fake companies, he could be in real legal trouble. Fraud. The word clanged in my ears like a warning bell. Suddenly, Ethan's smug little text didn't just look cruel. It looked desperate. He hadn't left because he was in love. He had left because he was running. Running from debt. Running from consequences. Running into the arms of a girl too young to know that men like him don't change. The more I pieced together, the more the picture sharpened. Ethan wasn't some mastermind. He was reckless, sloppy, arrogant. He thought I'd never notice the patterns, the missing money, the lies. But I noticed. And as I sat there in the glow of the desk lamp, surrounded by receipts and statements, something inside me hardened. If he thought he could humiliate me and walk away free, he was wrong. Because I had all the proof I needed. Not just of his affair, but of the crimes hiding beneath it. And when the time came, Ethan would realize that by leaving me, he had set himself up for the kind of downfall no 20-year-old girlfriend could save him from. I thought I had seen the worst of it. The accounts, the secret credit cards, the endless receipts of Ethan spoiling his 20-year-old fling while I pinched pennies for groceries. But I hadn't even scratched the surface. Because the truth wasn't just betrayal. It was crime. Claire, the lawyer who had been guiding me, called one evening after reviewing the tax files I'd given her. Her voice was steady but sharp. "Aria, listen to me carefully. This isn't just marital misconduct. What Ethan is doing could be federal." My throat tightened. Federal? What do you mean? I mean fraud. Shell companies. False write-offs. If I'm right, he's been hiding income, maybe even laundering money through fake entities. And if Vanessa's name keeps popping up on these documents. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. My heart knew. I flipped back through the files, my hands shaking. There it was, Vanessa Miller. Not as a girlfriend, not as a dependent. Listed as a consultant for one of Ethan's bogus companies. Payment after payment made to her account. Tens of thousands of dollars over the course of a year. It wasn't just that Ethan was spoiling her. He was using her to move money. I sat back, my head spinning. The room tilted around me. I had thought Vanessa was just a distraction, a shiny object for his midlife crisis. But she wasn't. She was a cog in the machine. Whether she knew it or not, she was part of his scheme. And suddenly everything clicked. That smug text. The rush to empty the account. The move to Miami. It wasn't just about romance. It was about escape. Ethan wasn't running to her. He was running with her, trying to stay a step ahead of the collapse he knew was coming. The more Claire and I dug, the uglier it got. Ethan had borrowed against our home, without telling me. He had siphoned off money meant for Emma's college fund. He had even forged my signature on one of the loan papers. When Claire showed me the document, my stomach dropped. My own name, in fake loops, sitting under thousands of dollars of debt. He didn't just betray you emotionally, she said grimly. He tried to tie you to this. If it all crashes, you'd be the one answering questions, unless we act fast. My blood ran cold. For a moment, I felt the old fear creeping back. The fear of being small, powerless, trapped in his shadow. I pictured Ethan laughing on a beach with Vanessa, while I sat in a courtroom accused of crimes I never committed. But then something burned through that fear. Anger. I had spent 22 years cleaning up his messes, patching the holes, covering the lies. And this time, he wanted me to take the fall for his greed. Not anymore. I looked Claire in the eye and said, "Then let's make sure he can't run." Her lips curved into a thin smile. "That's what I was hoping you'd say." Over the next week we moved fast. Claire filed motions. She alerted the banks. She handed over documentation to investigators. It was like pulling a thread on a sweater. Everything started to unravel. And Ethan, he had no idea. While he was posting sun-drenched photos from Miami with his new life, his empire of lies was collapsing behind him. Counts frozen. Partners backing out. Questions piling up. And then came the moment I never expected. Phone call. From Vanessa. Her voice was shaking. "Arya, I know you hate me, but please, you have to help me. Ethan's in trouble, and he's dragging me down with him." I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles whitened. The audacity. The nerve of this girl to call me, after sitting on my husband's lap while my daughter cried herself to sleep. But her next words stopped me cold. "He told me, if it all falls apart, he'll put it on you. He said he has paperwork. He said the house and the debts are in your name." I didn't believe him at first, but now I see what he's capable of. My stomach twisted. So it was true. Ethan wasn't just planning to leave me. He was planning to bury me. And suddenly, Vanessa wasn't just the other woman. She was a warning. Because if Ethan was willing to use her as a pawn, and me as a shield, there was nothing he wouldn't do. I hung up the phone, my heart pounding. My path was clear now. I wasn't just fighting for dignity. I wasn't just fighting for Emma's future. I was fighting for survival. And Ethan had no idea that the next time we faced each other, I wouldn't be the broken wife. I'd be the woman holding the power to end him. For years, I had carried Ethan's weight like a stone on my chest. But after Vanessa's call, after hearing the fear in her voice, something inside me shifted. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry. And anger, when sharpened with purpose, can become power. Claire and I met almost every day that week. Her office became my war room. We filed restraining orders, froze shared assets, and built a case strong enough to withstand any trick Ethan might try. Each time Claire stamped a document or clicked print, I felt lighter. "You're doing more than protecting yourself," she told me one afternoon. "You're teaching your daughter that strength doesn't mean silence. It means action." Her words sank deep. That night, Emma and I ate dinner together without the usual tension. No waiting for Ethan's footsteps. No bracing for slammed doors. Just the two of us, laughing over burnt pasta and spilled soda. It was messy, imperfect, and it felt like home again. But even as I found peace, Ethan unraveled. His calls grew frantic. First demanding, then pleading. One voicemail said, "Arya, if you love me at all, stop this before it's too late." Another angrier. "You'll regret this. Don't think you're safe." I saved them all. Evidence. Proof of his desperation. Emma overheard one of his calls once. Her face tightened and she said, "Mom, he sounds scared." "He should be," I told her. Because now the tables had turned. The man who once mocked me as boring little Arya was now the one cornered, scrambling in Miami while I stood strong in our kitchen. And the strangest thing. For the first time in years I felt alive. I started jogging in the mornings again. I updated my resume and even picked up part-time consulting work at a clinic. Slowly, piece by piece, I was building a life that didn't depend on Ethan's approval, or his lies. But just as relief began to settle, another knock came. This time not from him. Two men in dark suits. Investigators. They handed me papers and said, "Mrs. Matthews, we'd like to ask you some questions about your husband's financial activities." I invited them in calmly. Because unlike Ethan, I had nothing to hide. And soon, he would have nowhere left to run. The investigators' visit should have rattled me. Years ago it would have. But as I poured them coffee and laid out the folders Claire and I had prepared, I realized something shocking. I wasn't afraid. For the first time in decades, I wasn't covering Ethan's mess with nervous lies. I was exposing it. The men flipped through the paperwork, their brows furrowing. "Mrs. Matthews, this is very thorough. How long have you been keeping records?" I smiled faintly. "Long enough." When they left, thanking me for my cooperation, I felt a weight lift from my chest. Ethan had spent years trying to make me small, invisible. Now my voice, my evidence would be the reason he fell. And oh, how fast he fell. News traveled quickly. One of Ethan's partners pulled out of a deal. Then another. His name started surfacing in whispers. Fraud, investigation, charges pending. From Miami, the calls grew more desperate. "You don't understand, Arya," he shouted in one voicemail. "I only did this for us. For Emma. To give us a better life." I played it back twice, stunned at the audacity. He had drained our accounts, lied to our daughter, run off with someone younger. And now he wanted me to believe it was all, for us? Vanessa called again too. Her voice cracked this time. "He's losing it. He's paranoid. He keeps saying everyone's against him. I think he's drinking too much." I almost felt pity for her. Almost. But then she admitted something else. He said, "If it all goes down, he'll disappear. He has a passport. He's planning to vanish, Arya." My blood ran cold. That was Ethan, always trying to run from responsibility. But this time I wasn't letting him. Claire filed emergency motions. Investigators froze more accounts. By the end of the week, Ethan couldn't access the money he thought he'd stashed away. Miami wasn't a dream anymore, it was a cage. And then came the headline. "Local businessman under federal investigation for fraud and money laundering." There was his photo splashed across the news. Ethan Matthews, once the man who bragged at dinner parties about his brilliant deals, now labeled a criminal. Emma saw it first. She sat at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone, her face pale. "Mom, it's Dad." I looked over her shoulder at the article, my heart heavy but steady. "Yes, sweetheart. It's your dad." She was quiet for a long time. Then she whispered, "You're stronger than him." Tears filled my eyes. Because for so long I had doubted that. For so long I had believed Ethan's voice louder than my own. But now my daughter could see the truth. The real vindication didn't come from the headlines, though. It came from Ethan himself. One night my phone buzzed again. His voice was slurred, broken. "Arya, please. Help me. You don't know what they'll do. I need you." I sat in silence, letting his words wash over me. This was the man who once texted me haha as he left for Miami. This was the man who tried to bury me in debt and lies. Now he was begging. Finally spoke. "Good luck, Ethan." And I hung up. The next morning Claire called. "It's happening. They're issuing warrants. He won't get far." I stood at the window, watching the sunrise spill across the horizon. After 22 years of carrying him, I was finally free. Ethan's fall wasn't just his. It was my rise. But this story wasn't over yet. Because the day they brought him back in handcuffs, that was the moment true closure came. The day they arrested Ethan is etched into my memory like sunlight breaking through a storm. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Emma ran in, phone in hand, eyes wide. "Mom, it's happening." On her screen was a video. A news reporter standing outside a sleek Miami condo. Behind her, federal agents escorted Ethan in handcuffs. His face was pale, his hair unkempt, his suit wrinkled. The man who once strutted through restaurants with a smug grin was now reduced to a frightened shell, hiding his face from cameras. I set my mug down, my hands steady. "It's over," I whispered. Emma stared at the screen, then at me. Does it make you happy?" Thought about that. For years, I dreamed of him paying for what he did. I thought I'd feel joy, satisfaction, maybe even revenge. But as I watched him stumble toward the waiting car, all I felt was release. "No," I told her gently. "It makes me free." For the first time in decades, I wasn't tethered to his lies, his debts, his shadow. The man who tried to bury me with his mistakes was finally buried by his own choices. That night, I sat at my desk and opened the envelope of documents I'd saved. The receipts, the statements, the proof of everything. I thought about shredding it, burning it, erasing every reminder. But then I realized something. This wasn't just evidence. It was a record of my strength. Every page was proof of how far I had come. From the woman who once cried silently in her kitchen while Ethan came home late, to the woman who stood tall and refused to be destroyed. So I kept it. Not as a burden, but as a reminder. The following weeks were quieter than I ever remembered. No slamming doors. No angry outbursts. No fake apologies. Just peace. Emma and I built a new rhythm. We cooked dinner together. We laughed at silly TV shows. We walked through the park on Sundays, letting the fresh air fill spaces that used to feel suffocating. One evening she turned to me and said, "You're different, Mom. You look lighter." I smiled, my chest warm. That's because I am. I found joy in little things again. Fresh flowers on the table, music in the background while I worked, the quiet hum of freedom in every corner of the house. But freedom didn't just mean peace. It meant rediscovery. I picked up a part-time consulting job at the clinic, easing back into work I loved. I met new people, built friendships, and slowly the world didn't feel so small anymore. I was no longer Ethan's wife. I was Arya again. And the best part, I wasn't afraid of the future. The woman who once believed she couldn't survive without him had learned she was stronger than he ever imagined. When Ethan's trial began, I didn't attend the hearings. Claire kept me updated, but I didn't need to see him anymore. His life had become a series of court dates and headlines, while mine had become mornings filled with laughter and evenings filled with peace. The last I heard, he was sentenced to years behind bars. Fraud, money laundering, forgery. Every crime he thought he could bury came crashing down on him. Vanessa disappeared from the picture long before the trial. I didn't care where she went. She wasn't my problem. What mattered was that my story didn't end the day Ethan left me. It began. Standing on my porch one crisp morning, watching the sun rise, I whispered to myself, "You survived. You won." Because winning isn't always about destroying the other person. Sometimes it's about reclaiming yourself. Maria. I was betrayed, humiliated, abandoned by text message. But I didn't crumble. I prepared. I fought. I rose. And in the end, I found something Ethan never could, peace. If you've ever been left behind, if you've ever felt small, powerless, invisible, remember this. Your strength might be quiet now, but it's there, waiting. And when the moment comes, it will carry you farther than betrayal ever could. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe because stories like mine, they deserve to be heard.